All right, thanks for everyone for coming and closing out BrickCon with the final presentation of the con. That's pretty cool. I'm glad that everyone made it. I stand up here every year and give a similar version of the same presentation, and I sometimes feel like I'm repeating myself. And it's good to see the room still pretty full. So. All right, so let's get started. What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about, I want to do stuff on my computer involving Lego building specifically. There was another presentation earlier this con about open source stuff in Lego that covered more than just building, like programming Lego bricks and making cool mosaics and stuff like that. That's not the scope of this. The scope of this talk is specifically for building your MOCs digitally. Normally I would wander around the room, but I'm just going to sit here next to the mic just so everyone can hear me, and especially the people on Zoom that are here. All right, so has everyone here heard of Bricklink Studio or just Studio? All right, so it's kind of the officially supported Lego program for building Lego on your computer. What I'm going to talk about is a little bit about that, if you don't know about it, and then a little bit about what else is out there that isn't officially supported by Lego, but more provided by the greater fan community. The pros and cons of the major building programs. So I chose two specifically. I chose Studio because Studio is the one that's officially developed, and I also chose the primary fan developed digital programming platform or program. And so if you have already started dabbling with Studio and you don't want to use it anymore, or you think you would like something better, or not necessarily better, but something different. What else is out there, right? Studio and the rest of the programs all use a system called LDraw. And LDraw is basically a library of parts that describe Lego. And where do I fit in that? I run, along with a couple of other people, the LDraw.org website. So we have a whole community around digital Lego. It's what I've been doing. It's how I give back to the community since I have yet to bring a MOC, even though I've been going to conventions for 25 years. All right, so who am I? I'm Orion. I've been a lifelong Lego enthusiast. I didn't have a dark age. I basically just had a lack of money age. So I've been involved with LDraw since 2000. I took over the primary adminship of LDraw.org in 2004, so I've been doing this for 21 years now. For those of you who are familiar with Tim Courtney, he was affiliated with Lego Ideas in the early days. He's the one that actually founded LDraw.org, or helped found LDraw.org, and ran it until I took over from him in 2004. And then in 2023, our primary parts library admin took a step back, and I took over that role as well. And here's the rest of the team, or most of us. We were invited by Lego in 2019 to present LDraw to Lego. And so we all gathered in Billund and met each other, a lot of us for the first time in real life. And as you can see, most of the rest of the gents that I work with all live in Europe. So I don't really get to see them very much in conventions. I'm kind of the only active U.S. participant. Travis lives in California, but he doesn't go to conventions or anything like that. So I'm the only one out evangelizing to the U.S. crowd. I did it for a long time on the East Coast since I was in the Navy for 20 years, and now I've lived here since I got out of the Navy in 2017, and have basically been giving a presentation at BrickCon ever since, every year. But that's the rest of our team. All right, so why digital? Isn't pouring a pile of bricks on the table and and building something good enough? Yeah, it is good enough. But what's cool about virtual bricks is they're free, except for maybe the electricity you use to power your computer, which is significantly cheaper than the plastic. The other nice thing about it is you have an unlimited amount in whatever color you can think of, including bricks and colors that have never been produced in that color. Which can get you in trouble if you build a cool MOC and then want to build it in real life and then realize that you used a brick in a color that has never existed. But you know, that's the cool thing about virtual. I know a lot of people that use it to document their MOCs. Or they make a MOC in real life and then they want to provide it to the greater community or sell it as instructions. You only have a limited number of pieces, and you want to disassemble and use all those pieces in something new because the spark of creativity has hit you in a different way. You can document it and save it for posterity's sake and share it with your friends. I know the gentleman in the red jacket, he does Lego professionally, and he uses it to plan large-scale MOCs. He makes really big MOCs on commission, and he uses it to plan out how he's going to lay everything out. And also likes the fact that you can break everything down into modular chunks and play around with it. And then you can create instructions. There's quite a cottage industry associated with that now that instruction building has been integrated into Studio. You can sell your instructions on Rebrickable and other platforms. And then you can build your MOC in the LDraw world and then take it and import it into Blender and make some pretty cool animations as well, or artwork, or whatever your preferred 3D animating software is. All right, so what are the major programs? Well, I talked about Studio. Studio is the one that's official and officially supported by Lego. The other major one that's still being actively developed is LDCAD. And that's, I would say, with the exception of, we'll get into it later, but with the exception of the instruction maker, probably pretty much feature parity with Studio. So because those are the two that are actively developed, that's the two I'm going to focus on for the slides that I'm going to present. There's some other options. LeoCAD, which is fully open source and actively developed. I'm not as familiar with LeoCAD as the other two, but it is a third option. And the nice thing about LeoCAD is it's available for Mac. So it's the only one that's not Studio that's available for Mac that's still actively developed. If you've been around for a long time, you've heard of MLCAD. MLCAD was, it probably still is, the most popular non-Lego provided LDraw supported program out there. The gentleman who developed MLCAD has decided to stop developing about a decade or more ago and now no longer maintains it. But since it's been around for so long, there's still quite a bit of people that use it. Bricksmith, Alan Smith, he's around. I don't know if he's in the room. Nope. He is around the con. He's the one that developed Bricksmith and then decided to step back from the development of that. It is Mac OS only. It is no longer actively maintained by Alan, but it is completely open source. And then, just for completion's sake, there's Mechabrick. That's a browser-based. It is not explicitly LDraw compatible, but you can't import and export. So, what is LDraw? The gentleman in Australia, James Jessamine, developed the format. All it is a text-based file format that describes triangles and quadrilaterals, and everything is modular. He released it in '95 and then tragically passed away due to flu complications in 1996. But we have, with the permission of his estate, we have continued to develop and support the idea of LDraw. And while I have never met his mother in person, I do have semi-regular communications with her, and she's still amazed that her son's idea is still out there and still being supported by the fans. I didn't update these numbers for this website this year, so I'm pretty sure we're well past 19,000 parts in the library, which, if you think about it, is probably a small drop in the bucket of actual Lego produced pieces. We have much more than 4,000 parts in review. I think we're somewhere in the realm of 8,000 right now. And then everything, the entire license is open licensed. We chose Creative Commons attribution, and that's explicitly so that people can use it for commercial purposes, and it doesn't have the the viral requirement for it to be relicensed in the same, or for any modifications to be reshared openly, just so that it's more viable for commercial uses. So real quick, as you can see, everything is broken down modularly. So here's a 1x2 brick, right? A 1x2 brick is made up of a couple studs, some boxes, an understud, and some quadrilaterals. Since studs are the foundation of the LDraw or of the Lego brick, right? They have their own file. It's a stud, so we can just refer to it twice. And inside that stud file, we just describe a cylinder and some edges. And then if you break down the cylinder, all it is a bunch of quads and lines, right? So it's all modular. The primitives go to the parts. The parts become submodels in your mock, and then the submodels all get put back together for the larger mock. So what are the limitations of the file format? The LDraw file format itself does not specify how things connect together. Both Studio and LDCAD have their own independent methods of describing those connections, but they both support part snapping, just in two different ways. Also, the LDraw file format doesn't care about part collisions. Things can be placed into each other. Obviously, Studio has a way for you to detect that. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, as I say, because plastic bends, or digital bricks don't. And so if you're going to put a tile inside of a clip, for example, that clip is actually a little bit smaller than the tile, so that the tile can grip onto, the clip can grip onto the tile. And it would actually be a collision if you snap those two together in a computer format. But you want to do that because it's a pretty common technique. Even Lego uses it. So LDraw primarily is just a library, right? The library is our primary product. It's really our only product. Again, fully open source, open licensed. You're allowed to use it. You're allowed to modify it. You're allowed to download it and keep it on your computer and do whatever you want with it. There's no, we don't encumber anybody with the license. Since I took over as parts admin, I've tried to really update our release tempo. I'm on track this year to have a release every single month, which is pretty amazing considering we went from about 1 to 2 releases a year to, I started with every 6 months, and then this year I'm on track for a release every single month. And I hold myself to it. And my team, the rest of my team does too. I recently promoted 2 guys to parts admin so that they can help me out, because there's just almost too much for me to do in 1 month. We also have a commitment to be fully backwards compatible. That means if you create a model now with the official LDraw library, and that caveat is important, and I'll get to that once I talk about Studio, that model will always look the same no matter if you load it now or if you load it 10 years from now. Now, some of those parts may have been updated by us, but all we do is just redirect um, the old part onto the new part, and then your model looks the same. Or if we have to make something obsolete, the obsolete file stays in the library and the new correct file gets released alongside of it. All right, so why would I want to choose Studio? Well, the big reason is it's officially supported by Lego, and it has some pretty deep ties into Bricklink, which is the primary way of getting loose parts if you're not using Mechabrick. It's easy to download. It is available for Mac OS, which is a plus for some people. It is not available for Linux. I looked, so unless I looked wrong. But you could probably emulate it if you wanted to, the Windows version if you wanted to. It's mostly LDraw compatible. And what do I mean by mostly? Well, it doesn't support our texture mapping techniques, so there's a few printed parts that are going to render wonky if you use the official library. It also doesn't use the full official library. Studio's library tends to lag our new updates. They also have some parts added in that are not in our library and we have no control over. And that's why I said we have a commitment to backwards compatibility back here. If you make a mock in Studio, it may not necessarily be fully backwards compatible because some of those parts may have been added by Studio and not be part of the official library. So that's the biggest kind of hitch as far as using Studio and the LDraw library. Now it does use the LDraw library. All the parts on the back end are fully described in LDraw. The file that it outputs is really just a zip file that has been renamed .io, and you can unzip that file, and inside there's an LDraw file that tells that you can distribute to anyone you want and load into any LDraw compatible program. It does have part snapping, so that's good. Connection snapping is good. Now that I've used it in LDCAD for over a decade, I'll never go back. It makes building so much easier. The other big strength of Studio is its built-in photorealistic rendering. I think honestly, it's the best of the LDraw renderers out there. And it also has a built-in instruction maker, which is nice too. So it's kind of one-stop shopping. If you're looking to get started quickly, Studio is where you want to go. So what's the cons? I just talked about the LDraw compatibility. Also not open source, if that's something you care about. There has been some controversy regarding Studio's compliance with open licensing. For anybody who knows that, that's how I found out that I'm directly quoted in Wikipedia and the Studio article complaining about that. Not much to my chagrin, because that's not exactly how I want to be directly quoted in Wikipedia, is complaining about something. But I'm not going to change it, mostly because I shouldn't. And then the other thing that's kind of been a source of frustration for some advanced users is that the parts connection and the texture extensions are not documented or not made public by the Studio team. It makes things, interoperability between other Lego LDraw programs and the Studio itself, it makes things a little bit difficult. Some fans have kind of reverse engineered some of that, but not all of it. So just be aware of that. The other thing is the reverse is true. If you import LDraw parts into Studio, it's not going to have any of that information for connection. So the part snapping is not going to work. All right, so I talked about I got ahead of myself. So parts that are in Studio but that are not in Studio but are in the library. At the request of users, I added to every single part page on LDraw.org. There's a download that you can download a zip file. The zip file gives you everything you need to get that part into Studio. So basically a one-click download, and then you use Part Designer to import it into Studio, or you use the custom parts method, which is the one I use, which there's a tutorial on LDraw.org on how to do that. Just again, be aware, if you take a part from the library that isn't in Studio and put it in Studio, it's not going to have the part connection data. You have to add that via Parts Designer in order for it to work. So there's a little bit of extra work to do if you want that part snapping capability. All right, so why would I want to not choose Studio? Why would I want to choose LDCAD? It's written by a community member for the community. It is fully LDraw compatible. It's the program I use to create to make models on my computer. So it uses the full LDraw library. It's fully LDraw compatible. I think it's a little bit more customizable in terms of how parts fit into parts bins over Studio, but I could be wrong. That could just be me not being enough of a Studio power user. So I'm fully willing to admit that my Studio foo is not very as strong as, say, it is with LDCAD. LDCAD also has part snapping. That documentation is open, and there's a repo on GitHub that the maintainer of the program uses to distribute that part snapping outside of his regular releases of LDCAD. And then the other nice thing about it is it's available for Linux. It is not available for Mac OS, but I have heard of a few people emulating the Windows version in Mac OS. The cons, again, this is also not an open source program. The author, I've talked to him extensively about it. He has committed to making it open source if he ever decides to stop development. He's still developing it, so whether or not that's true or not, I couldn't tell you, but I believe him. He seems fairly passionate about it. I definitely feel that he would do it. It doesn't have instruction, it has some basic instruction commands. It has steps. It has some other things associated with that, but it doesn't have that fully featured instruction maker that Studio uses. You have to go out, either back into Studio, create your model in LDCAD and import it, and then make instructions there, or you can use one of the other fan-created programs like LPub 3D is probably the best choice. It does have a slow development cycle, so you're not getting monthly updates with this program. He's on his 5th or 4th beta of 1.7, and the last one was released a year and a half ago or something like that. So, it's one guy that does this on his spare time, not a team that's paid by Lego to develop it professionally. And again, it doesn't have a built-in renderer, but it does export to Pavre, and he added, it's not the Blender files, I think it's a Collada export. I could be wrong about that. Since I don't use Blender very much, I haven't really used that feature. The Pavre export, so Pavre, for those who don't know, is an open source ray trace renderer. The Pavre export is pretty decent even right out of the box. You can export the Pavre file, throw it into Pavre, hit go, and you get a really good rendering right out of the box without any tweaking. It's not as good as Studio, but it's quick and easy. So how do you get started? Well, if you want to get started with Studio, you go to Bricklink, and it's really hard to read that on the screen up there, I think, but the second choice over as of yesterday when I made this slide, you just mouse over Studio, and then you click download. And then it takes you to a download page, and you're download and install on your computer, and you're ready to go. For LDCAD and everything else LDraw associated, go to LDraw.org, click on the big Get Started button, choose the OS that you want to get started with, and follow the instructions. For Windows, we have an all-in-one installer. You download that. It installs everything you need on your computer, and you're off and running. The library that's in that installer may be a few months out of date because the gentleman who maintains the installer, again, he does it on his free time, and our release tempo has increased to the point where he can't keep up anymore. So you may have to download a new library, but that's fine. It's easy to do. You just download the zip file, put it where your programs know where it is, and everything is updated. All right, so you're interested in digital Lego, or you're interested in giving back to the digital Lego LDraw community, or you need help. And I don't really care if it's Studio or MOCAD or something that you downloaded from Usenet in 1996 and are now just getting back to, and it still runs on your computer for some weird reason. Go to the forums. I'm very committed to making sure that everybody gets help for the help they need. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I ask that you search and see if your question was answered already by somebody in the 13 years of forum posts that we have. But if you don't find it, ask it again. I don't care. All right? There's no such thing as gatekeeping in my community, and I'm going to make sure it stays that way. And the rest of my team is behind me on that. We have a low enough volume of posts on the forums that I pretty much read everything that gets posted, and if somebody starts getting out of line, I let them know. We don't really have that. So there is no gatekeeping in my community, and it will stay that way. And again, if you made a really cool mock and you just want to brag about it to your digital friends, please come to I'm always interested in seeing something cool. That's why I come to these conventions. We also have the official model repository, so we're kind of slowly. It's how I waste time when I don't feel like coding for the website. I choose an official model and I make it in LDraw, and then I post it to the forums, and then eventually my model guy gets it posted to the repository. So there's a whole repository of official models. It's not a huge set. There's probably about 1,000 models in there, but it's all official. The actual sets released by Lego. My favorite theme is architecture, so every single architecture set is in there except for the new Neuschwanstein castle, because I haven't gotten around to making it yet. For example, it's also where the parts tracker lives. I can't remember. Did I take the? I didn't. Okay. So what the parts tracker is where we approve and review parts for submission into the official library. So all of the new parts that go into the library are peer reviewed to make for completeness and accuracy. It gets looked at by 2 separate people, and then me or one of my admin helpers approve it, and then it goes out in the release for that month. We recently finally got it to the point where the oldest part on the tracker is only 5 years old. So we had some pretty old parts on there, mostly because they were super complicated and hard to review, and nobody wanted to do it. And we finally decided that parts languishing on the tracker for 20 plus years wasn't a really good idea, and cleared out all the backlog over the last year or so. But if you're interested, if there's a part that's not in the official library or not in Studio, the parts tracker is the first place to look. And then if it's not in the parts tracker, the forums is the second place to look. And then if you can't find it in the forums, I have a part request section of the forums for you to actually request the part be made. And if it's newer, if it's new enough, you'll probably get it pretty quickly, within a day or two, if that. The easiest way for you to get somebody to get it to you, if you have a part that you want, is to say it's available in the building instructions app in the 3D format, and it's fairly trivial for us to get that geometry data and get it posted to the forum, so you can at least have something to use before we make it we clean it up and make it official. So just to recap, the LDraw ecosystem. Right, we have the library. That's the what describes all the bricks in digital form. We have converters that can take the library and then put it out into other 3D programs, or we have the library is used by utilities and editing programs and whatnot, and then those programs output into something, either a cool rendering, a movie, or building instructions or other cool things. All right, so really the crux of the whole thing is that LDraw format library, which is free for everyone to download. All right, how do you give back? If you get crazy and want to and have a very meticulous mindset, you can start authoring and reviewing parts. The learning curve is high, but we have a gentleman that wrote a specialized CAD program specifically for LDraw parts to make things easier. Additionally, you can help out on the forum, answer questions if you know them. I started a Discord. It's not very super popular, mostly because I don't have the link posted publicly anywhere. You have to ask me for an invite, but that's mostly because I'm just getting started with this Discord thing, and I didn't want a big flood of spam bots. Or if you get really well versed in LDraw, I was super stoked to see at least 2 other digital Lego related presentations this year, and one adjacent, the open source. So I'm not the only one talking about doing Lego on your computer in a physical based con. If you want to give presentations, you're not stepping on my toes. I will go to your presentation in a heartbeat. And with that, we have about 10 minutes for questions. If anybody has questions.
We've got a couple online questions.
Sure.
Hannah asks, I'm still very new to the concept of digital Lego rendering. I have tried to find an option for building with my iPad. Is there a program comparable with any tablets, more specifically iPad? Are there any plans for programs to become iPad compatible?
So that's a good question. There are none currently actively developed that I'm aware of. There have been a few attempts in the past, but none of them have really survived the constant development cycle that's required to maintain a mobile app. But you never know. The more popular the digital building gets, the more somebody might be willing to make something that's compatible.
I'm so sorry if I pronounced this wrong, but Elam asks, for new parts submitted, how do you do the peer review? Do you try to get a physical part so you can check the dimensions are correct, or do you trust the submitter, and have there been issues where there are mistakes in the dimensions?
Oh, there's always mistakes. If you look at if you go to the parts tracker and you sort on parts that have been marked obsolete, I think we're at somewhere around 900. Also, there's parts that we release under numbers that may not necessarily be correct, and so we do move files for those, and there's about 1,500 parts that have move files. So we definitely have mistakes. As far as do we trust the submitter? Mostly. A lot of the guys that do the reviewing build like little demo models with that brick and make sure that it plays well with the things that it's supposed to play well, especially like there are slopes that slope pieces that are supposed to mesh with other slope pieces correctly. That's something that we've gotten wrong in the past and is also a focus with the new with current review practices. Again, we're talking about a library that's existed for 25 plus years. There's going to be inaccuracies, and there's going to be things that aren't quite right. When we discover them, we try to fix them. But it is a digital format after all, so it's easy to fix.
And then I also have a question.
Sure.
Does LDCAD use the same naming conventions as Studio/Bricklink?
In what way?
Like I know that Lego and Bricklink often use different color names.
So that's a good question. I think every website that I'm aware of uses a different standard for color, which is crazy. I think so a little history on that. About 20 years ago, I made a post on on LugNet, which was the old place for all of us AFOLs to gather, about coordinating color names between LDraw and Piron, which have always had a historic connection to each other. We were actually hosted on the Piron servers for a very long time. And Bricklink, and at the time Bricklink wasn't really interested. And so because of that, it kind of devolved into the Wild West. The best I can say on that is use an online resource to figure out what colors are what I like using Rebrickables, because it tells you Bricklinks, it tells you Rebrickable, it tells you ours, and if you want to know what color is bright light green, usually the newer stuff is all the same. The numbers for those colors might not be the same, but usually the color names for the newer colors are the same. But for some of the older legacy things, the colors names may not necessarily be the same.
I was just going to say, related to colors, there's also Riley Howarders has a table that like shows every different website and the color name, the color number, and all that, and that's another really useful resource. It's like what's that called? The Rosetta Stone of colors.
Yeah, and actually, I think everybody else's cross-link tables are derived from Riley. So
at this point, yeah.
So Riley basically is the unofficial color maintainer for the community.
The color whisperer or
Yeah.
something. My question for you is, like, you've been doing this for a long time, and I actually use it for my parts guide. That's where I get my part images, which is awesome. But my question is, like, what are you excited about for the future, other than just continuing to increase the number of parts? Like, are there different like modeling techniques or approaches or evolutions of the underlying file format? Is there anything that's going on that you're excited about seeing mature in the nearish future?
I really want to get some sort of connection data standard laid down. I'm kind of hesitant to adopt LDCAD standard because that's his thing. I think if at this point it's become mature enough that it probably should just become an official spec, but he still wants control over it because he wants to be able to change things as his program evolves. So somebody just asked this question on the forums actually about connection data. And I said, for all intents and purposes, the way LDCAD does things is the way we do things. And if he ever decides to stop development in LDCAD, that standard is going to become an official standard. Personally, I think the building instruction app and our ability to get shape data from that has really kind of revolutionized our part output, especially for complex, like organic geometry parts. Those things would never be in the library, and which is also why if you're a big Bionicle builder, you're going to be very disappointed in all of the digital platforms because none of them have a very large selection of Bionicle parts for that exact reason. They're very complex, organically shaped parts.
So, yeah, hi. So a thought that occurred to me as I was sitting there is come up in conversations with other people about the idea like certain parts are, don't exist in a color, or maybe they're like, they exist, but, they're like extremely expensive or something. Is there an API that Bricklink has where you can like check prices and like have it maybe automatically just flag a part and say, by the way, you just used a 1x1 that's $10 a piece?
Yes, so Bricklink does have an API. It has a couple of requirements that I'm not willing to spend money to fulfill. One of them is a static IP address. In order to get access to the API, now some services don't mind doing that and will, but we use Rebrickable's API pretty extensively because it doesn't have that requirement. It just has how many calls per second how many pings per second can you do on this API, which slows things down. But that being said, you can take your LDraw model and you can import it as a custom part list into Rebrickable, and then Rebrickable will tell you, hey, you used a part that's only come in one set that was released in 1968, and there's only 2 sellers on Bricklink that are selling it, and they're selling it for $35 a piece. Right? I have a personal issue or story with this. Is I bought some instructions for a large Technic supercar, and it used like a 19L flexible axle that was only available in one set. It was like a helicopter, and it was 10 years old, and there was only one seller on Bricklink selling it, and they wanted $15 for one, and I needed 4. And I don't want to spend $60 for 4 parts, you know. So yeah, I highly recommend Rebrickable for that. Again, they have pretty tight integration with LDraw, and you can import everything from an LDraw file into a custom parts list, and get exactly what you want.
So it's not sort of related. I would just like know in Studio, it does have an exclamation point if you pick a color to that part that's rare. They also have part cost, and sometimes they'll also say if you have a part, here's the cheapest color for that part if you're just looking for filler or whatever.
Nice. Yeah, I know they have some pretty tight integration in Studio with Bricklink, so and again, that's in their own best interest. They want to sell more pieces. So I would guess that that kind of stuff will pop up if you build your mock in Studio.
Dave asks, how does Unity play into the evolving parts database? How do you extract and import from there?
So that's probably, Unity is probably what allows us to get the new parts out as quickly as we do. Looking at Studio, it looks like it's backed by Unity and as its underlying 3D rendering platform. The Lego Build app definitely uses Unity because that's how we extract shape data. We kind of have we don't have an official sanction from Lego, but we kind of have a gentleman's agreement, if you will, that we can use their shape data. We have in the past. They've actually provided us with shape data in the past from the old Lego Universe game. So, we figure it's probably okay. Anything else? All right. Oh, one more. You got 2 minutes.
All right, so I'm just curious on how the instructions work. Like, do they follow you step by step, or do they show you the easiest way to build it?
So I haven't tried making instructions in Studio. There was another talk on that earlier in the con where he talked about how to make instructions. But really, it really is how you format it. It's formatted in the way that you want it to be. I think you can let it generate instructions automatically, and they can be good depending on the structure of your file, or they could be very terrible depending on the instructions of your file. So, as with anything automatically generated by computers, use at your peril. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you for coming.